You can start.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my audience. Once again, we have assembled over here to introduce a topic on what to expect during peer review. First of all, I'll introduce myself, Dr. Souvik Ganguli. I have done my BTech in electrical engineering, MTech in mechatronics, and PhD in the area of system identification and control. I have been serving as an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical and Instrumentation Engineering at Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology that is situated in Patiala, India. So this is about me. Let me brief you about IIU in a few minutes, and then we will introduce the topic to the audience. International Internship University, or IIU, is a leading virtual education system and global brand confederation, which is the most valuable and trusted worldwide and well reputed in delivering innovative programs. Globally, it is a trusted name for quality training programs and is committed to providing better and virtual education to all the young learners across the globe. In a short span of time, IIU has spread its wings in almost 195 countries, including 6 continents, under the strong leadership of its visionary founder, Mr. Piyush Pandit sir, a committed and inspiring social activist, a passionate educationist from the last 2 decades, providing education to the students from various social and cultural backgrounds. So with this, let me share my PPT and let me move ahead with the slides. Let me go to the beginning. Right. So what we are having today is what we expect from the peer review process. How is the peer review process? What are the stages, or what are the different types of peer review we have been going through? And I'll share my experience. Preferably, it will be a very useful topic for some new researchers or those who can call as budding researchers or entering into the research domain in the different technical and non-technical fields as well. So over here we can see my brief profile. As I've told you earlier, that I have done my BTech in electrical engineering, MTech in mechatronics, and PhD in the area of system identification and control. I have a teaching experience of 16 years and industry experience of 2 years. There are ME thesis which we have guided, master's thesis which we have guided. It's almost counting around 29. One of my PhD students has been recently awarded with a PhD degree, and 2 are undergoing a research under my supervision. There are as many as 18 SCI or top reputed journal papers to my name, and around more than 20 or even close to 20 is their scopus as well. I have a book chapter record of 42 patents awarded internationally and nationally. It's 20. Filed patents, it's 7. I think it's 8. It's taken from our old data. And you can see my research profile and Google Scholar citations, H indexes, and all those things. So with this, let me come to the topic where we talk about article review and where we talk about different stages of review. So first of all, once we go through the different stages, you may find over here in the diagram beautifully explained that first of all you have to secure funding. Funding does not mean that you are to publish in open access only. Funding also means that whether you have some experimentation or whether you are taking some travel grants, or whether you are going to an industry, interacting with the industry person. So different types of fundings that is included as a first step. Then when we go for experimentation or conducting of research, we need to write our article, we need to conduct the research, we need to have a thorough literature survey as well. And after that, we will start writing our results, develop the methodology, in engineering or technical field, as we normally do, we go for some experimental setup, some sort of experiments which are not available in our labs. Maybe we have to make a trouble for that. That's why we have introduced the first topic, that where is experimentation being performed, right? So depending upon that, we require funding. Sometimes we require some good collaboration with top institutes as well, for the sake of any laboratory infrastructural facilities out there in their labs, and all those stuffs will be included before you start going for an article submission. Of course, you are quoting your affiliation. Definitely, your institute is also supporting you in your research as well. So directly or indirectly, they are also a part of their funding, right? So after that, after you prepare your articles, it must go through several stages. First of all, we have to conduct a very thorough literature review, a literature survey, point out or identify the different gaps existing in the current literature, and based upon the current literature, we will have to going for certain framing of objectives. Based on the objectives, you develop the methodology, perform some experimentation, or do some quantitative analysis in case you are doing in marketing or humanities or other backgrounds. You have to go with some quantitative analysis, and then you reproduce the result section, write out the background of work, complete the abstract and the concluding remarks, and then your paper is ready for submission to a particular journal or a particular conference. Then comes your next stage, that whether you have a review system. We will gradually elaborate as we move ahead. There are several stages or several different types of peer review process already going on, right? So after that, you get certain revision comments, or you get certain resubmit options, you get certain acceptance after you revise your manuscript. We'll be going through it shortly. And after that, you get your once it is accepted, it's published online. And then of course we have gone through the training that we get the printed version. Sometimes it's an online version, sometimes it's a printed version by the journal authorities. And then how you promote your article, how you discuss with your collaborators, how you discuss with your colleagues, share your experiences about your research, and all those storytelling part, which we have already gone through in a certain conference organized by IIU. So after that, I think we must focus today on the peer review process. Let us have the standard definition for a peer review process, what we are expecting, where some scientists, or which we call them as peers, they evaluate the quality of other scientists' work. So this is how the definition goes. So my research work, I have submitted it online. I have some in my area of research, say for example, control system or system identification. I also work with meta-heuristic approaches. So definitely, depending upon the area of research, some reviews will be marked, some reviewers will be marked, and some scientists are going to analyze the quality of my research article. So the goal is to ensure that whether your work is rigorous, the work is coherent, and also uses some past research data and add some value to a particular field, or enriching a particular field. So that is equally important. Novelty of the work must be there, and also it must fill through the aim and scope of that particular journal in which we are submitting. So different types of review process, we must go through it one by one after the paper is being submitted. First of all, the first and the foremost step is being done by the editorial team is to check for the compliance of the journal guidelines. So whether a particular template in which the journal expects the authors to submit their research work, whether it belongs to that template, whether there is plagiarism in the paper or not, whether there is sufficient novelty in the work, and whether it fits the aim and scope of the journal. That's also important. So as I've written over here, the third point, whether it fits within the aim and scope of the journal. So, in case it does not fit in the aim and scope of the journal, whether obviously the editorial team must look into the template in which the paper is being submitted, whether it fits in the journal, uh, whether it has got sufficient novelty, that is being checked by the associate editor and the editor in chief. And if there is a problem anywhere, if there is a plagiarism issue anywhere, it's immediately being rejected. So this is what we call as the test rejection. It has not entered into the peer review process, but it is in the review process by the editorial team, by the associate editor, by the editor in chief, likewise. Then if it passes through this particular screening, means 2 and 3 are satisfied, we go to step 4. Step 4 is it is being sent to the peer review. So it is being sent to certain experts, subject experts rather. It is sent to some subject experts in my field, say for example. Then once, I think 7 or 8 or even 10 reviewers are being consulted, maybe 4 or 5 agrees to review. So peer reviewers are being selected. Emails are being circulated to the reviewers. There may be some decline. Say, for example, just today, I thought that I will not be able to define or give sufficient time to read the paper and make adequate comments depending upon the time constraints being provided to me with my own schedule of work. So I immediately decline to review. So obviously, there is an expectation that they are the editorial team, or rather the associate editor and the editor in chief, contacts through email to the adequate number of reviewers. Maybe 1 or 2 may decline due to a mismatch in subject area, due to mismatch in their schedule of work, or they may be busy in some process, in some academic activities, in some other activities. And then we go to the next stage. Next stage is uh, whether your article is being reviewed. Say for example, I have 3 reviewers, I have experienced comments from 3 reviewers, and it goes through some revision comments, it goes through the acceptance stage, and then once it is being accepted, it goes to the reviewer center once again, so that some recommendations or final recommendations will take place from the associate editor, from the chief editor as well. A strange experience, I should say. I should not name the journal over here, I should not quote it in a public platform, but still sometimes it happens that the reviewer has accepted, since your associate editor and your editor in chief are experts in the field, they may have a relook and make appropriate recommendation. Sometimes the comments can be one reviewer is accepting your work, but 2 reviewers are saying that your work is not sufficiently novel enough to be considered for the reputation of the journal. So in that case, if there are differences of opinion amongst the reviewers, it's absolutely based on the recommendation of the editor, or recommendation of the editor in chief, or the associate editors who are handling that particular article, journal article. They are going to take the decision. So of course, we have such experience that even after the reviewers have accepted our work, the editor-in-chief had some opinion of his own. So in that case, we had to make 2 further revisions before it is finally being accepted. So this is how it goes like. So of course, the stages are very clear. The paper will be submitted. It will be in the editorial board. It will be checked for quality. It will be checked for aim and scope. It will be checked for plagiarism issues. Then if it does not go through, obviously there will be a test rejection. Most of the papers are being test rejected, because you will find that in top quality journals, of course, there are 15 to 20% is the acceptance rate. So So 100 papers sent to that journal, only 15 to 20 will be getting accepted. Some may be having higher rate of acceptance, but more or less, as we check out with the top quality journals or the Q1, the Q2 journals, mostly it's 20% of the rate. So you send 5 papers, you are expecting to get a revision comments or expecting to be reviewed by the peer reviewers. It is expected that 2 out of 5 will click. So clear cut, 1 or 2 will click. Definitely others will require some more modification, development of subsequent novelty in the work. Otherwise, it will not fit in a particular aim and scope of a journal. Maybe that may be the reason. Maybe some plagiarism issues. So obviously, being a new learner in this field, we must also ensure that you have written it thoroughly on your own language, and rather than copying and pasting from other research articles. So this is the entire process, that how a review process will work. And let me go ahead. So there are different types of review process. We will just analyze the things as we proceed further. There may be a single anonymous peer review process, right? So over here, the name of the reviewer will be hidden from the author. So this is what we call as single anonymous peer review. So your reviewer is not familiar to you, or it may be that it has a double anonymous peer review. Means both the names of the authors are hidden from the reviewers to the reviewers when it is sent to the reviewers, and vice versa. So the reviewers don't know you, and vice versa. The authors are also not disclosed to the reviewers as well, right? So this is a double anonymous peer review. Quite often, double blind reviews are quite a possibility. And then there are some journals which provides an open or transparent peer review. Of course, they must take into account the conflict of interest. Okay, they must take into account that whether any reviewers you are opposing for, or whether you are not opposing for any reviewer at all. So that may be called open or a transparent review process. So everywhere you'll find that everyone authors are also identified, and also the reviewers marked or assigned are also being identified by the journal team. So this is the process really being used, but mostly we have the anonymous, either single anonymous or double anonymous peer review. So these are the different types of reviews. So you need to also understand before you are submitting any paper to any journal. Definitely we need to understand that how will the peer review work in a particular journal. Once not only you are going to check the aim and scope of the journal, but also need to think upon that whether you will go for single anonymous peer review or double anonymous peer review, or will you going for the transparent peer review. So far we haven't tried with transparent or open peer review, where the reviewer names are being disclosed to us, but mostly it's single and double anonymous. So how your review process works. So first of all, you write something, you complete one research article, you submit it, then it goes to the review stage. It must go through some revisions, then you need to resubmit, and of course when you have satisfied your examiners or your reviewers or your peer reviews, definitely go for acceptance and online publication and print publication as well. So these are the different steps by virtue of which we must go through, and it must have some initial decision is to be made, that whether we are subjecting it to minor revision, whether we have given to revise article which is a major revision category, or whether we are going to reject. So accept, reject, minor revision and major revision will come across this part, that when we call a particular decision to be a major decision, or some minor comments are there. Say, for example, some uh, technical comments are not there. Of course, some editing in terms of the sections of the paper, or some representation of work, or some I should say some result representation, or some grammatical errors are there, which are to be rectified. Some referencing are not as per the journal template, something of that sort. If any reference must be included, but we are not emphasizing upon any technical comments. So once it's a technical comment, maybe that you people may ask you, or peer reviewers may ask you to revise your methodology of work, illustrating your methodology in a more elaborative fashion. They are not able to identify whether your what are the novel contributions of your research. So these type of things will require definitely major work in the article, or some showcasing of results. They want it in a different form, so obviously it will lead to certain major contribution on the author's point of view. So obviously, it can go through the 4 basic steps. In every journal, you'll come across these particular steps, that it may be rejected, it may undergo some minor or major revisions, where you are asked, where your authors will be asked to revise your comments, revise your paper based on the comments given by the reviewers, and then we go for the acceptance of the article for further publication in online mode as well as offline mode. Now, here are some of the things that we must also know as a reviewer when we are reviewing what should be my ethics for the reviewer. So, author anonymity. So, for double anonymous journals, authors and reviewers should not know each other, so that your work must be, your reviewers must not be biased for the decision of the manuscript, right? So you have to read about or study about the participant anonymity, and reviewers confidentiality is also being mentioned. So the reviewers normally do not share the content of any unpublished article unless and until they are doing some collaborative review. So of course, these sort of things, and of course the decision must not be biased. There should not be any personal grievance on a particular author or something of that sort. So the statement should highlight upon based on the paper you have received. So a reviewer also must look into these sort of things before we are reviewing. At the same time, we are reviewing at least 1 to 2 manuscripts per week. Almost at this point of time, we are reviewing at least 1 to 2 manuscripts per week. So we have to also devote certain good amount of time to read the article, to judge the article, to understand the novelty of the work, to understand the aim and scope of the work, and based on the work being provided to us, we must ensure that whether it is of sufficient quality, to be published in a reputed journal for which we are reviewing. So obviously, there is an equal responsibility not only on the part of the authors but also on the part of the reviewer as well, and he or she must be following the ethics that if it's a single anonymous peer review, say for example, the reviewers are aware of the authors, the reviewer are aware of the authors, but the authors are not aware of the reviewers. So obviously, today all of us know that let us check the scholar profile, let us check the scopus ID of the authors, and based on that we should not make any remark, because the paper may contain some sufficient novelty, the paper may contain certain good features, so that that should not be overlooked. So a reviewer must be ethically correct in reviewing article. So first impression is of course the last impression. This is how it works. It depends upon the writing style or the writing ability of the authors. It depends upon the quality of the language, and of course, just as I told you, It should be bias free, and there should be adequate cohesiveness between the flow. So the flow must not be getting stuck. The flow must remain on for the entire work that has been quoted in the paper. So definitely, these impressions sometimes make a slightly biasness towards whether to reject an article or whether to accept an article, right? After that, let me go into the overall scenario where the contribution to the field is clear enough. So this is from the point of from the reviewer aspect, we must think in that direction that whether there is sufficient novelty in the research, or whether the contribution of the research has been highlighted either through bullet points. Say, for example, we have a very good system in elsewhere. They expect from you to write their research highlights. So from there itself, the editor as well as the editorial team and even the reviewers are clear enough about the quality or the contribution of the work and whether it fits the aim and scope of your journal. So obviously, you're being an author, you must be clear regarding your contribution to the field, and there should be some proper reporting guidelines. So of course, it must have a flow of introducing the particular topic, writing about the limitation of the existing technique, then move on with the problem that you have considered for your work. After that comes your methodology of work. So the sequence is there, and then you showcase certain results and discussions. You carry out some experimentation, you carry out certain simulation work likewise, and after that you provide some concluding remarks. It is equally essential that you must admit through your assumptions of your work the existing limitations of your work, and which will help you to carry further future research. Because always we look in a paper, in a good quality paper, we always look for that what is the scope of this particular work, what is the future scope of this work, what is the future proposition, or in which field we can proceed further and uh, develop a corresponding develop a new, create a new field, create a new work. Say, for example, when we were developing some hybrid technique, what is the need of the hybridization? Say, for example, we are hybridizing two different algorithms. Are the algorithms compatible enough to be hybridized? First of all, what are the features of, say, algorithm X, and what are the features of algorithm Y? What makes them in a hybrid combination? What type of objective function we chose to solve this particular problem? What is the nature of that particular objective, whether it's a maximization problem or a minimization problem, and what are the different constraints that we handled, what is the error that we are going to optimize, what is the relevance of that particular error function in the optimization process. So likewise, things go in such details. So obviously, whether there is appropriateness of the literature review and adequate references have been put in. So when we are constructing any research topic, if it's a conference paper, we are normally expecting that around 15 to 20 references are being quoted, around 30 to 35 references, maybe slightly more, not more than 40, of course, for any research article which is to be published in a journal or a reputed journal. So 30 to 40 is good enough number. And whether the latest research trends are being cited or not, every reviewer always look into the descriptive figures, legends, whether the legends are marked in the figures or not, whether say, for example, I'm carrying out certain comparison between different methods. So the legend must be appropriate enough to distinguish or classify the different methods. When we are representing the data in the form of a figure or a table, especially in the form of a table, whether we are appropriately quoting and following certain format that is there pertaining to that particular journal article. So of course, these are the things. Font size, definitely grammatical, devoid of grammatical mistakes, definitely is a plus point to your article, and which every reviewer must look into. right? So these are some of the glimpses that we wanted to highlight, that reporting guidelines, whether we are able to maintain the reporting guidelines, whether we are able to highlight the research work, whether its contribution is sufficient enough. Research highlights a very good example which you can follow in your whether it's the form of the journal or not. The contribution of the research work must be very much clear, and appropriateness of the literature. You say, for example, I'm doing a work on induction motor and I'm quoting some articles related to synchronous motor, right? So obviously, definitely, your literature must be appropriate enough. References must be adequate. Just as I told you, 30 to 40 references good enough for a journal article. 15 to 20 reference we usually check for for conference article. And apart from that, if I go through the references, definitely I normally look as a reviewer. I normally look into the references and whether they have made or emphasized upon the limitations of the existing technique in the literature survey section, or whether any latest papers are being quoted or latest references are being cited. That is our concern as a reviewer. Apart from that, just as I told you, the figures must be clear enough. The legends must be clear in the figures so as to distinguish between the different methods being quoted or compared. Apart from that, the contribution of the field must be also be clear. So these are some of the things that we thought that we should share, being acting as a reviewer or being acting as an author. Now, uh, what is the method of analysis, and how do we go about it? Some flaws in the design or some flaws in the study part, whether appropriate method or materials has been used, any statistical data, whether we are making certain relevance of statistical techniques or not. Say, for example, I work normally with stochastic techniques. So once we are dealing with stochastic techniques, generally their results are not same. Generally, their results are not unique. So every run we get different simulation results. Of course, what we need to do, we can take some standard test runs. Say, for example, 20 to 30 or 50 test runs, or even 100 test runs, depending upon the problem at hand, or depending upon the problem you took up. Apart from that, we usually find out the mean and the standard deviation. That's why I'm telling you the relevance of adequate statistical techniques, whether it is required. Usually, we call an algorithm to be stable if its standard deviation is minimum. So depends upon the way you are doing in your experts in your own field, or you are doing research in your own field, depending upon that. We also take certain non-parametric tests like Wilcoxon test, Kruskal-Wallis test, Friedman test. All these tests are some of the non-parametric tests that we conduct. So what is the custom, depending upon the work that you are showcasing, depending upon the design or simulation or experimentation you are performing, whether there is any relevance of any statistical information, and what kind of a material are you working with. Certain emerging materials, definitely appropriateness of the material, appropriateness of the data, appropriateness of the method that you are projecting. The problem should be absolutely be decided. Problem formulation will be absolutely clear for all the reviewers, so that they make a concluding remark regarding some favorable decision in your article. So of course, you have to satisfy your reviewers. Of course, at certain point of time, you have to satisfy your reviewers. So you try to minimize in such a way that what we are expecting in a review process, that that your article must be having some good literature survey, some appropriateness of material, some statistical methods are being employed, that is being reproduced through some figures or tables. Some comparison has been carried out with the existing work, showing that betterment of your technique with the existing literature. So these sort of things, contribution of your research work, why we are considering your research, how you build up your story, how do you go about in answering to the question what, how, and why. that you are doing this particular work. And of course, it's another important thing which I thought that I should mention over here. What Why your paper will be read by the different researchers who are working in your own field? That is the most important question you should ask time and again to yourself before you are starting or starting your article on a particular topic. So why your paper should be read? Why should I read your paper? So that insight must be there. That I think clarity of thought must be there. Some novel contribution in the research must be there. Some advancement, some technological advancement in the research must be there, so that we are going to read your article and be giving favorable comments if we are at the position of the reviewer. Now, let us discuss about the results, discussions, conclusions, and limitations. This is also equally important. Uh, Often, more and often, we have found that we read the abstract section to judge a particular article, what is the work all about, so that we get a summary of your work, first of all. Then we go through the introduction section where we mostly deal with the part that what is the novelty of your work, what is the limitation of the existing techniques for which you are opting for this particular work. Apart from that, we go into the methodology. Slightly we'll go through the methodology, because mathematics methodology, this section we will skip mostly, and mainly we'll highlight upon the results of your work. And what is the best finding that in your work, what is the best way that you can emphasize your finding, right? So at the same time, we must also have emphasis on the part that whether I have sufficient assumptions. I have stated my assumptions in the problem statement or problem formulation, or when we are defining a particular problem. Say if I work in the area of optimization, what kind of problem I have been handling with the optimization technique, whether the technique that we are using for the optimization process is a novel technique, whether my objective has not been defined prior to this. So what is the exception from the current literature, and what kind of constraint that we are handling in that particular research, in case we are dealing with some optimization technique, whether it's a problem of maximization or minimization, what kind of a problem that we are handling. So these type of things must be there as in your result section, so as to for the reviewers to be impressed about your work and make favorable decisions. Once again, you have to satisfy either in the revision mode or in the major or minor revision, you have to satisfy all the reviewers to get a favorable decision, of course, before it goes to the editor for the final decision as well. Your conclusions, very clear. You must be very much appropriate, that your conclusions must be appropriate for your study that you are doing, whichever work you are doing in your own research field, in your own research domain. Apart from that, what are the limitations? It should follow immediately from the assumptions you make, that what are the limitations of the existing technique, what simplification did you make in the study, and what should be the direction for future research. Definitely, if every paper must highlight the limitation or the simplification, so you have to arrange it in such a way that your limitations are not very wide, or it should be narrowed down. It should not be talked about the limitation of the present technique. It should be talked as the simplifications that we have assumed for the present study. We will further analyze it in a more generalistic approach, or in our future proposition. So definitely, this must be very much. You must be very much thorough with this part. You must be having clarity, absolute clarity at this particular part, because every reviewer, when we are reviewing any particular article, we must go through these processes. We must understand that are the findings accurate enough, that best fits the work, and whether my sections are containing some certain assumptions, are the conclusions appropriate, and finally we should emphasize upon
I should not say it's a limitation of your work. I should say rather in a different way. I should say that what are the simplifications that you have assumed, and in a correct way that you have highlighted your limitations of your present study, and propagating the directions for your future research. It is not only for you, but it will further propagate your, or further help your get your citation, right? Citation of your work. It will be more cited unless and until you provide some future direction. So it's a very good thing that you quote at least 2 or 3 future scope, highlighting your limitations of your work, or highlighting, rather I should not use the term limitations from now on, I should use the term simplifications, right? So appropriate simplifications of your work that you have considered from the present study, and apart from that, how do you highlight upon the future directions. Now, few ethical issues that we must think of. These are both from the point of reviewer as well as from the point of view of authors as well, that maintain the anonymous part, that we should not quote our names if it's a double blinded review. So obviously, if it's a double blinded peer review part, so of course we will not quote any names of the authors, and the authors also should ensure that they should not, there is a common practice as well, that there is a tendency that why my paper is not cited. You have to be very careful. Being a reviewer, you have to be very careful that whether you require that citation to be appropriate for that work. We had received certain comment that there were few comments being suggested, few papers were referred by the reviewers. If you feel that it is absolutely appropriate for your work, then only cite them, otherwise don't cite them. It was a comment from the editor-in-chief. So at certain point of time, if they are irrelevant, better that somebody is quoting, being a reviewer, somebody should quote that these are the possible methods with which you can compare. So this is an intelligent way of reviewing as well, not to quote your paper and say that this paper must be cited. This is a very recent work, this must be cited. So this is very shameless on the part of the reviewer process. So being a reviewer, you must also follow certain ethics. Consent regarding the participants. Say, for example, when you are submitting in your articles, definitely some consent is required from the different participants in the research article. Say, for example, if it's a collaborative work including researchers from different institutions, definitely some consent, some informed consent must be there. Ethical approval, if you are dealing with certain human beings in your study, if you are dealing with certain animals in the study, definitely you have to take an ethical approval for the human being involved or the animals being involved. No signs of data or image manipulations. Of course, you must understand that the data and the image manipulation should not be a part of your work. So it is, you must be ethically correct enough to quote the appropriate results that you have obtained. Sometimes, if the reviewer is a stalwart in his own field, definitely he or she can able to be catching up with the results, and depending upon the results or depending upon the figures or the tables that you produce, they are able to identify that you have made a manipulation of the data, or made a manipulation of the image, right? So this should not be a part. Definitely anonymous, you must not disclose where it is needed. Where it is needed, you should disclose your position. But of course, from the both from the author's point of view or from the reviewer's point of view, both must agree to this particular ethics and bring about the things, bring about rather the a healthy culture must be there between the authors and the reviewers mutually. I think and this is most important, if as a reviewer, what are the good elements of a review report? So it should be very precise, concise. It should reflect upon the assessments being made on the quality of science or data or images. Your comments must be good enough for your authors to understand that what exactly do you want to mean. Okay, sometimes some comments may be haphazard, so you must maintain certain comments in a logical sequence. Say for example, you are commenting about the reference first, then you go back and commenting about the introduction section, then you go back, comment about the result section, likewise. So it should not be haphazard, so it should follow a sequence, it should be easily understandable, and obviously it will be giving you the the editor or the associate editors who are involved in the editorial team to give you an overview about the suitability of production and some specific edits that must be made in the article, some revision that you are suggesting that must be there. And apart from that, you must also ensure that the strength of the article and the weak points lying in the article. So this is how you go about it. These are some of my assessments. Of course, you can differ from my opinion as well. So sometimes it must be easily understandable that what we are expecting, a logical sequence definitely, and specific edits if needed, and of course highlighting the contribution of work and also highlighting upon the weaker points or weak sections of your paper. Uh, this we are talking about the next rejection, why papers get rejected before they are getting reviewed. So if it's a poor fit, as I told you earlier, that if it does not fit in the aim and scope of the journal, of course it is a poor fit. And if it is poorly presented, sometimes we are also not native speakers, sometimes our language may not be as good as the native English speaking countries. So definitely some spelling mistakes are there, definitely. Formatting, it's not formatted to the journal template, right? Methods are not appropriate, or there are some weak links in the methods. Sufficient novelty is not there. Inadequate literature survey. So obviously these are also important, equally important for you to check into before sending it to a particular journal, so that it is not rejected from the test or the editorial team before it goes for the review. Now, why are papers rejected after review? This is also equally important. Reviewers are not convinced. Definitely, you have to convince, you have to satisfy your reviewers. You have to make them convincing. You have to convince them regarding the contribution of the work that you are doing. Methods are not robust enough for the journal, right? Some specific sections, maybe the result sections are weak, or the methodology section, or the problem formulation statement may be weak enough, or your introduction is also weak enough sometimes, right? You are not able to project your work satisfactorily. Paper may be ill-focused or fundamentally flawed. So some major mistakes in the technical part, or maybe calling it the novelty of the work is not being highlighted, or not being so much tremendous enough for the paper to be published in a reputed journal. So obviously there are papers which are getting rejected. Handling rejections is very important, because every person are or as an individual, we are not able to handle criticisms in the appropriate sense. So sometimes you overreact, right? So criticisms, you have to accept the criticisms provided by the reviewers. You have to read the review comments thoroughly, and the editorials letter carefully enough, and focus on why the article was rejected, why your reviewers and your editor is commenting against your work, right? So of course you have to rework, of course you have to address the comments, send it before you send it somewhere else. You have to rework the paper to address all the reviewer concerns and submit to another journal. So criticism is what you need to accept from today. Clear enough? I think criticisms are the most difficult part of test rejections, or rejections after it is being revised. So we cannot accept, by human nature we cannot accept criticisms, right? So of course you need to accept your criticism of your work. Read the reviewer comments definitely. Your follow the time frame requested. Say for example, you have been asked to revise or resubmit, right? You must maintain the time frames being requested. Definitely some specific time. We have received in a particular paper some around 25 comments or 23 comments, if I can recall appropriately. So we were given 4 months, maximum of 4 months, definitely. We spent almost 3.5 months working on the paper, developing the comparison that they have highlighted upon with some certain methods. We have to read those methods, we have to develop their particular simulation code and have to take measures accordingly. And after 3.5 months, almost we submitted that paper to the desk once again. So address each reference point. Referee point must be addressed and it must be provided in a separate Word document, preferable to use a table form. And if you even if you are not using table, you can give it in a point-wise fashion, so that based on the question, what kind of work that you have been supporting, and you should highlight. And of course, be polite and be positive, right? The process may take 2 to 3 iterations, because normally they allow you to the editorial team may give you up to I think 2 or 3 turns for you to revise completely, accept all the criticisms, and if you are not able to meet any expectations, or say for example they ask for the hardware and the hardware is not available in your labs, definitely you cannot immediately support it, or some material has to be procured, or some experimental kit has to be procured. So of course it will be time consuming. So you can reply them politely saying that it can be included as a future project. Now, what are the benefits that you get from a reviewer? My benefit, I'll comment. I'll not say on too much on different things. What is there in the slide? Recognition that you get, your Publons profile or your ORCID profile. Those are important. Also, certificates at some point of time. Most foremost important, you are learning something new from a particular paper in your respective research domain. That is most equally important. So once you are writing or once you are trying to develop a new research field, if you get any chance of reviewing, do not miss them. If you get any chance of going through any reviewing process, do not miss them. This is my notion. Second things, recognitions are immaterial over here. These are some of the recognitions that we provide. Say for example, some open access journals, if you review them, we get certain discounts. We get some Web of Science reviewer recognition. We get certain ORCID profile you can add them to your ORCID profile. You can add it to your Publons profile. You can get certain certificates from the journal. You can add it to your CV that you are a regular reviewer or you are an associate editor for a particular journal. These things are secondary. But once you are studying your research, most important field, that you are serving to a field voluntarily, and at the same time you are learning something new from other research articles in your respective domain. That is most important. That's the most important takeaway even for today's discussion as well. So you must volunteer to review. So of course you must create an account of your journal's website. You get official mail address. You create your ORCID account. You include your affiliation. These are the different stages that after creating your account, you must specify your degree, highest degree, add certain keywords so that your editorial team must take into account your research domain, are able to send you papers for reviewing, connecting with the editors, associate editor. You get to know certain things about the editorial team, who are the associate editors, who is the editor in chief. Of course, some recognition certificates or emails from the journals. Of course, some keywords that we must give. It should be good for the university education, even curriculum design. It may help you. Some keywords that you must avoid is students, education, teachers, second graders, likewise. So these are some of the keywords that you must avoid, and these are some of the good keywords that you may include if you are working upon some education based journals, if you are working from the education sector, if you are working related to curriculum part, if you are dealing with certain childhood education, likewise. So accordingly, based on the keyword search that you make, I have given you some example regarding humanities. Of course, it will differ from field to field, and of course some strong keywords will help you to recognize your profile appropriately and get suitable reviewers, paper reviews based on your specialization or based on your research domain. It is very good thing to review over here. In any peer review process, there is a reviewer guide. I have quoted you here over here with Sage Journals, but you can get it in review process. Publons is another important profile that you get how to conduct a peer review. There are several videos which are available. You can see the Web of Science Reviewer Academy training course. You can how to be an effective reviewer, something of that sort, how to review articles. So already some good points have been highlighted. Some online resources and PDFs are also available. What kind of resources that you get? You get some dedicated space for the author support and services. I know it from my previous days. I think when we started my research area or in my PhD work, starting career of my PhD, we used to get certain emails from the different journals for reviews. So definitely they used to give us some 1 month subscription to access some articles which are there in Scopus, or if you are reviewing for elsewhere. So definitely these kind of benefits that to get published resources, definitely, and answers to some of the author questions, and also available. So you also need to learn which version of your paper you can share and when and where. Definitely these type of resources are of course available, author resources as well as reviewer resources available. I think we have no more to say. We can stop here, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for attending this particular training course. I think we can take it back to IIU, the person dedicated for that. We can wind up over here. You can post your questions at my Facebook, at our Facebook page of IIU. Thanks for being a patient listener, and I am expecting some very serious comments and serious questions from uh, the different corners, from the different fields, from the different researchers. So I think this particular training course is particularly useful enough for my budding researchers or new learners in this particular field. So we can stop here today, and I'll be happy to answer if there are any questions in the Facebook page. Thank you so much.